everyone, it's the last part of the Twits, so we'll see what happens to Mr. and Mrs. Twits' house. The carpet goes on the ceiling. What now, they all said, looking at Mugglewump. Aha, cried Mugglewump. Now for the fun. Now for the greatest upside-down trick of all time. Are you ready? We're ready, said the monkeys. We're ready, said the birds. Pull out the carpet, shouted Mugglewump. Pull this huge carpet from under the furniture and stick it to the ceiling. On the ceiling, cried one of the small monkeys. But that's impossible, Dad. I'll stick you on the ceiling if you don't shut up, snapped Mugglewump. He's dotty, they cried. He's balmy, batty, nutty, screwy. He's wacky, cried the roly-poly bird. Poor old Muggles has gone off his wump at last. Oh, do stop shouting such rubbish and give me a hand, said Mugglewump, catching hold of one of the corners of the carpet. Pull, you nitwits, pull! The carpet was enormous. It covered from wall to wall. It had a red and gold pattern on it. It's not easy to pull an enormous carpet off the floor when the room is full of tables and chairs. Pull! Yelled Mugglewump. Pull, pull, pull! He was like a demon hopping around the room and telling everyone what to do. But you couldn't blame him. After months and months of standing on his head with his family, he couldn't wait for the time when the terrible Twits would be doing the same. At least that's what he hoped. With the monkeys and the birds all pulling and puffing, the carpet was dragged off the floor and finally hoisted up onto the ceiling. And there it stuck, all at once. The whole ceiling of the living room was carpeted in red and gold. Now the table, the big table, shouted Mugglewump. Turn the table upside down and put a dollop of sticky glue on the bottom of each leg. Then we shall stick it onto the ceiling as well. Hoisting the huge table upside down onto the ceiling was not an easy job, but they managed it in the end. Will it stay, they cried. Is the glue strong enough to hold it up? It's the strongest glue in the world, Mugglewump replied. It's the special bird-catching, bird-killing glue for smearing on trees. Please, said the roly-poly bird, I've asked you before not to mention that subject. How would you like it if it was monkey pie they made every Wednesday and all your friends had been boiled up and went on talking about it? I do beg your pardon, said Mugglewump. I'm so excited I hardly know what I'm saying. Now the chairs. Do the same with the chairs. All the chairs must be stuck upside down on the ceiling. And don't forget to put them in the right places. Oh, do hurry up, everybody. Any moment now, those filthy freaks are going to be rushing with their guns. The monkeys, with the birds helping them, put glue on the bottom of each chair leg and hoisted them up in the ceiling. Now the smaller tables, shouted Mugglewump, and the big sofa, and the sideboard, and the lamps, and the tiny little things, the ashtrays, the ornaments, and that beastly plastic gnome on the sideboard. Everything, absolutely everything must be stuck on the ceiling. It was terribly hard work. It was especially difficult to stick everything onto the ceiling in exactly its right place. But they got it done in the end. What now? Asked the roly-poly bird. He was out of breath and so tired he could hardly flap his wings. Now the pictures, cried Mugglewump. Turn all the pictures upside down. And will one of you birds please fly out to the road and watch to see when them frumpious freaks are coming back? I'll go, said the roly-poly bird. I'll sit on the telephone wires and keep guard. It'll give me a rest. They had just finished the job when the roly-poly came sweeping in, screaming, They're coming back! They're coming back! Quickly the birds flew back on the roof of the house. The monkeys rushed into the cage and stood upside down on top of each other. A moment later, Mr. and Mrs. Twit came marching into the garden, each carrying a fearsome-looking gun. I'm glad to see those monkeys are still upside down, said Mr. Twit. They're too stupid to do anything else, said Mrs. Twit. Hey, look at all those cheeky birds, still up there on the roof. Let's go inside and load up the lovely new guns, and then it'll be bang, 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 and bird's pie for supper. Just as Mr. and Mrs. Twit were about to enter the house, 2 black ravens swooped low over their heads. Each bird carried a paintbrush in its claw, and each paintbrush was smeared with sticky glue. As the ravens whizzed over, they brushed a streak of sticky glue on the tops of Mr. and Mrs. Twit's head. They did it in the lightest touch, so even the Twits didn't feel anything. What was that? Cried Mrs. Twit. Some beastly bird has just dropped dirty droppings on my head. On mine too. Don't touch it, cried Mrs. Twit. You'll get it all over your hands. Come inside and we'll wash it off. Those filthy, dirty brutes, yelled Mr. Twit. I bet they did it on purpose. Mrs. Twit got the key from under the doormat, where Mugglewump had carefully replaced it, and put it into the house. The Twits are upside down. What's this? Gasped Mr. Twit as they entered the living room. What's happened? Screamed Mrs. Twit. They stood in the middle of the room, looking up. All the furniture, The big table, the chairs, the sofa, the lamps, the little side tables, the cabinet with bottles of beer on, the ornaments, the electric fire, the carpet. Everything was stuck upside down. The pictures were upside down on the walls, and the floor standing on was absolutely bare. What's more, it had been painted white to look like the ceiling. "Look," screamed Mrs. Twit, "that's the floor. That's the floor up there. This is the ceiling. We're standing on the ceiling. We're upside down," gasped Mr. Twit. "We must be upside down. We're standing on the ceiling. Look, down on the floor." "Oh, help," screamed Mrs. Twit. "Help, help, help. I'm feeling giddy." So am I, cried Mr. Twit. "I don't like this one bit." "We're upside down, and all the blood's going to my head," screamed Mrs. Twit. "If we don't do something quickly, I shall die. I know I will." "I've got it," cried Mr. Twit. "I know what we'll do. We'll stand on our heads. Then anyway we'll be the right way up." So they stood on their heads, and of course, the moment the tops of their heads touched the floor, the sticky glue that the ravens had brushed on did its job. They were stuck. They were pinned down, cemented, glued, fixed to the floorboards. Through a crack in the door, the monkeys watched. They jumped right out of their cage at the moment the Twits had gone inside, and the roly-poly bird watched, and all the other birds flew in and out to catch a glimpse of this extraordinary sight. That evening, Mugglewump and his family went to the big wood on the top of the hill, and in the tallest tree of all they built a marvellous tree house. All the birds, especially the big ones, the crows, the rooks and the magpies, made their nests around the tree house so that nobody could see it from the ground. "You can't stay up here forever, you know," the roly-poly bird said. "Why not?" said Mugglewump. "It's a lovely place. Just you wait till the winter comes," the roly-poly bird said. "Monkeys don't like the cold." "They most certainly don't," cried Mugglewump. "Are the winters so very cold over here?" "It's all snow and ice," said the roly-poly bird. "Sometimes it's so cold a bird will wake up in the morning with his feet frozen." "Then what shall we do?" cried Mugglewump. "My family will all be in a deep freeze." "No, they won't," said the roly-poly bird, "because when the first leaves start falling from the trees in autumn, you can all fly to Africa with me." "Don't be ridiculous," said Mugglewump. "Monkeys can't fly." "You can sit on my back," said the roly-poly bird. "I shall take you one at a time. You will travel by the roly-poly superjet, and it won't cost you a penny." And down here in the horrid house, Mr. and Mrs. Twit are still stuck upside down to the floor of the living room. "It's all your fault," yelled Mr. Twit, thrashing his legs in the air. "You're the one. You're the ugly cow who went hopping around shouting, 'We're upside down, we're upside down.' And you're the one who said to stand on your heads. So it'd be the right way up, you whisky old wadhawk," screamed Mrs. Twit. "Now we'll never get free. We're stuck here forever." "You may be stuck here forever," said Mr. Twit, "but not me. I'm going to get away." Mr. Twit wriggled and squirmed, and he squiggled and wormed, and he twisted and turned, and he toggled and churned, but the sticky glue held him to the floor just as tightly as it once held the birds in the big dead tree. He was still as upside down as ever, standing on his head. But heads are not made to be stood on. If you stand on your head for a long time, a horrid thing happens, and this was when Mr. Twit got his biggest shock. With so much weight on it from above, his head began to squash into his body. Quite soon it had disappeared completely, sunk out of sight in the fatty folds of his flabby neck. "I'm shrinking," burbled Mr. Twit. "So am I," cried Mrs. Twit. "Help me, save me, call a doctor," yelled Mr. Twit. "I'm getting the dreaded shrinks." And so he was. Mrs. Twit was getting the dreaded shrinks too. And this time it wasn't a fake, it was a real thing. Their heads shrank into their necks. Then their necks began shrinking into their bodies shrinking into their legs, and their legs shrinking into their feet. And 1 week later, on a nice sunny afternoon, a man called Fred came round to read the gas meter. When nobody answered the door, Fred peeped in the house, and there he saw on the floor of the living room 2 bundles of old clothes, 2 pairs of shoes and a walking stick. There was nothing more left in this world of Mr. and Mrs. Twit. And everyone, including Fred, shouted, "Hooray!" And that's the end of The Twits. Hope you enjoyed it.